Welcome to the Fleet Geeks podcast. We're here to help develop fleet and transport professionals. Do you want to progress and develop your skills and knowledge? We promise to bring lively conversation and debate around interesting issues and keep you bang up to date with changes in our awesome industry. The Fleet Geeks are a community of professionals, and if you enjoy the podcast, why not join the discussion for free in the Fleet Geek community over on Facebook? Hello, and welcome to the Fleet Geeks podcast and to Lunchtime Live. Top 10 common mistakes found at audit for fleet operators. So, one of the things that Flagship do is we do a lot of audits, a lot of compliance audits. We do interim compliance audits, and we do earned recognition and force type audits as well for standards. We do health and safety and those kinds of things, but I'm not here to talk about that today. I am here to talk about what are the most common mistakes or challenges I find when we audit, or Flagship find when we audit our clients or operators, those kinds of things. Hopefully this will be useful for you, because if you've got an audit coming up, it will help you prepare for it. And likewise, it may highlight the need for you to potentially have an audit. We find that this time of year, November, December, January time, people are thinking about going into the new year, and it's a good time to look at checking the systems, particularly where, we've got transport managers who are employed in a business, and it's really useful to get your work checked, right? Because we don't know everything, right? So it's really useful to be able to come in and for us to be able to check how things are going and help support that. And we do that in a really supportive way. So you don't need to feel challenged. You don't need to feel that, we're going to come in and like crap over everything that you're doing, or say that what you're doing is crap, because that's not the way we work. We will make sure that we are supportive and help you see what is needed to be done. So without further ado, I'm going to do the top 10, and I'm going to count down from 10 to 1. So, at number 10, in the most common mistakes found at fleet operators, numero 10, is driver reportable defects at service. So that's a really common issue that we find. And that when I say driver reportable defects are found at service, and there's no corresponding driver check to demonstrate those defects that have been found at service. So that is issue number 10. Quite a common one, something we see on a regular basis, and we recommend for drivers to make sure that they do a thorough walk-around check prior to inspection, because particularly from a FORS and an earned recognition point of view, and if you were to sort of see the traffic commissioner at any point, that's something they're going to look to do to check that your driver walk-around check process is robust, right? So that's about demonstrating that. So that's one of the things that we pick up that potentially is an area for improvement. So that's number 10. Number nine is fuel and AdBlue monitoring on an ongoing basis. So one of the things that you'd find as part of your MIVR, if you were to have a maintenance investigation visit from DVSA, one of their questions is how do you monitor AdBlue usage? Now, the reason for that is we need to make sure that we're monitoring the emissions of our vehicles, okay? And one of the challenges we find is that we don't really tend to monitor that stuff, right? And many companies don't keep a track or keep a record. So there is no guidance necessarily on how you do that. So how you do it is up to you, or what works best for you, depending on the types of systems that you've got. But it's certainly something that you need to consider, and is part of the maintenance investigation visit report. So that is in at number 9. Number 8. So this is a big challenge, very important. Much more safety related than number 9. But we often find there's some challenges around the wheel talk policy, procedure, and register. So we might have a policy that says one thing, the procedures carried out is something else, and then there's potentially a register with missing information or not fully completed, or there might be a total absence of a wheel talk register in itself anyway. These are challenges for us to deal with, okay? So certainly something to think about. particularly if it came to protecting yourself, if you had a wheel fall off obviously God forbid that's what would happen. But if you were to, we need to make sure that we've got a robust wheel management process in place. So as part of the audit, we'll test that system. We'll look at wheel talk policy. We'll look at the procedure that's being taken. Is there correct records? Are they all in place? And is there a wheel talk register? And if you're missing any of those things, that's a potential risk, right? And it's certainly an area for improvement for you. So that is numero 8. Number 7 on our top 10 is not notifying the traffic commissioner of convictions. So this is one of your duties as part of the operator license undertakings, and you need to make sure that you check notifiable convictions, and you make sure that those are being notified to the inquiries at otc.gov.uk email address. You need to add your operator's license number from a search facility point of view, or you'll be asked for it by response. And you need to make sure that you're doing that and keeping on top of it, because it may be deemed that you're not fulfilling your responsibilities at a future point. So that is in at number 7. That is one of the challenges that we find, that transport managers are normally probably a bit scared of notifying, or maybe they just miss it. Maybe they haven't got their fingers on the pulse. They're not properly checking driving licenses, and they're not monitoring it. Or it may just be that they're omitting to do it for whatever reason. But get doing it, guys. And certainly that's something that we often find and is in at number 7 on our top 10. So numero 6 in the issues found, and these aren't in severity order. These are in like the commonness order, if that makes sense. So you may think that there's stuff lower down, but it might just be that it's less common we see it. This is based on how common we see it as being an issue. Okay, so I'm on to number 6. Number 6 is inspections falling out or into the following week, particularly for an MOT.
Hello, it's Shani from Flagship Partners. We are really proud to sponsor the Fleet Geeks podcast. If you need expert advice or training for your fleet business, make Flagship Partners your first choice. We are really excited to announce the launch of our Transport Manager Academy. With expert development for fleet leaders, we offer fully accredited initial Transport Manager CPC training, CPC refresher, and operator license awareness training, as well as mentoring, support, and professional development beyond the qualification. Our vision is to develop elite fleet professionals.
Okay, so that's a bit of a challenge. And what we find is the inspections are being completed, and on occasion they might fall into the following Monday or Tuesday because they've been busy at the weekend or whatever it may be, or whatever excuse that you want to come up with that probably wouldn't be accepted at a public inquiry. So inspections falling into the following week. If you say that your inspections are going to be 6 weekly, you do need to make sure that they happen within those 6 ISO weeks. It doesn't matter if it's Monday on ISO week 1 and Sunday on ISO week 6. But as long as it's within those periods, then you're going to be golden. But it's an obviously very common issue that we find that it just sort of shoves over. So that's a challenge, okay? So that was number 6. The 5th one, number 5, common issue, brake testing is a bit of an issue, right? So as part of an audit, we test brake testing. We test your system for brake testing, and we will often find that there's not enough being carried out, or we might find that there's issues with them because they're not loaded and they're not meaningful, or that they've been signed off as passed when they haven't passed by the workshop. And there's often normally an education piece around that. So in at number 5 for most common issues is brake testing. So that's obviously a big one for you to consider and look at as well, making sure that you know when you're going to be brake testing, make sure they're completed, make sure you get a report, and make sure that it's meaningful. Okay, so brake testing in at number 5. Or inconsistent brake testing, I think, is probably one of the issues, in that you'll say one thing but the records are saying another. That's going to be a bit of a challenge for you if everything falls out of bed, right? So that's number 5. In at number 4 for most common is that we'll find many operators utilize the OCRS and vehicle encounter reporting system that's available on VOL, on the online system. But one of the issues they don't do is they don't thoroughly look at the MOT failures. And what they don't do, and this falls into sort of two areas because it's ineffective managing the maintenance. But one of the things that we often find is that they're not, there's no real follow-up from an MOT failure. Now that's something that's really important, right? Particularly, if you have challenges around, or if you're ever to be questioned on your first time MOT pass rate, I think this is particularly important if you fall below the national average, because the question may be asked at some point by someone official or more official than us as the auditors, which is, well, what are you doing about it? Or how are you managing your maintenance provider? Because ultimately that falls on you still. So I know it's a big bone of contention, and we often have arguments about it. Well, I can't help it. I'm paying someone to do a job and they're not doing it properly and it's getting an MOT failure and it's not my fault. Okay, let's not get into the fault debate, but let's make sure that you've done the appropriate follow-up to make sure that you are managing your maintenance provider and making sure that you've got a thorough investigation for any MOT failures. And what we do find very commonly is there might be the odd failure on that report that the operator doesn't know about because they've not properly read it. That is probably quite common. That might be in at number 11 or 12 if we were to do 20. But anyway, so that's numero 4. Number 3, which is a big challenge, particularly for restricted operators and particularly for bigger companies, is that we have a change of directors and somebody forgets to tell the operator license holder. Somebody forgets to tell the transport manager. So company's house says one thing and the operator license says another. That's a big no-no. You need to make sure that we keep the traffic commissioner informed. We need to make sure that we keep Vol up to date with that information of any changes of directors. So that's a really common one that we find that we find challenges on that. So that's in at number 3, and certainly worthwhile you keeping check on, making sure that, particularly if you're a transport manager and there's stuff that goes on in the business that's maybe away from the transport department, I'd certainly have a process. If you had a robust process in place where you checked it on a regular basis, for example, and maybe it changed and it just fell between your check and you've got a history of checking it, we could probably accommodate something like that, right? But nonetheless, it's really important that the transport office, transport manager, or responsible person is kept informed of any company's house changes so that they can then go on to notify the traffic commissioner. So that was in at number 3. Number 2 is no CPD record from a transport manager point of view. Really, really common now. So we'll go and do an audit and particularly find that it's been past 5 years, which reminds me, mine is due. I'm due for a refresher soon. So past 5 years, look at me get inundated with transport manager refresher offers. It'll be interesting to go and see someone else's offering. So 5-year transport manager refresher has not been completed. There's no CPD evidence in place. So if that's a challenge for you, make sure you get that booked. I would be happy to hear from you and to help support you with that. Flagship do them in person in Peterborough, and we do them online too. But if you need a transport manager refresher, get in touch. But that is in at number 2. You need to make sure that you have ongoing CPD. That is something that's going to be looked for, and probably may not be a challenge unless something falls over, or it might not be an issue until you need to make changes to the license, renew the license, something like that, and then that's normally a trigger for further checks and questions. So it may be okay until it's not okay, right? But nonetheless, why not get one, right? If you've not had a refresher in 5 years, chances are you're a little bit behind the times. So well worth doing that. That's in at number 2. And the final one, in at number 1, the biggest challenge that we find as part of our ongoing auditing for operator license holders is, drum rolls please, maintenance providers not being kept up to date on Vol and or no agreements in place. Okay, so could be one of the two, and I know it's a bit cheaty because I've got 2 within number 1, but it's interrelatable, right? So maintenance providers need to be maintained and up to date on Vol. Okay, so what we'll often find is, we've just started using this maintenance provider and they're not on there, or we haven't used that maintenance provider in like the last 4 years, 5 years. Well, why are they still on there? Well, we were told to, just in case. No, just take them off, and if you start reusing them again, add them on. Okay, and then if they're on there, we need to have a maintenance agreement in place. So Vol offers you one. There's a template one. When you add a maintenance provider to Vol on the online system, it offers you a maintenance agreement. Or I can't remember what page it is or annex in the back of the Guide to Maintaining Roadworthiness, but in the back of there is a maintenance contract in place for you to print and fill out and what have you. Okay, so there's my offers of guidance for you. Those are the top 10 issues we find at Audit, not in order of severity, but in order of commonality. So which ones are you guilty of? If any of that's resonated with you, why not get it sorted? Alternatively, get in touch to have an audit. But yeah, those are the things we find. I hope that's been useful. Really appreciate you joining and having a listen, and I'll see you on the next one.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please share with your friends and colleagues too. Join us for free on Facebook with the Fleet Geeks community for transport and fleet managers. Fleet Geeks offers ongoing professional development, networking and mentoring too. So get in touch with me, Pete Rushmer, on any social media platform to find out more.